Uh-oh.
You're on air. Episode 36, LaraChat Live. Don't call it a comeback, is what we're titling this one. Gentlemen, how have you been? Sean, you have changed tremendously over the years. Okay. All right, we have a little bit of a different lineup here. Welcome, everybody. I understand we have taken quite the hiatus, a little bit over a year, I believe, about a year and a half, I think, since the last time we've actually gotten together. With us today, we have Matt, we have the man J-Mac, and we have Joe Ferguson, and hopefully Sean is going to be jumping on board here momentarily. I don't know where the Sean monster is at exactly, but he should be joining us. But we didn't want to keep you, the listener, waiting for all this exciting Laravel goodness. I don't know. Guys, I've been drinking. It's early. I'm sorry. Okay. How's everybody doing? First thing, I like to take a moment to think. Oh, there is Sean now. That's fine, Sean. We'll start without you. It's okay. Just stumble in whenever you feel like it. It'll be fine.
Cool. Appreciate it.
So I want to take a moment to thank everybody who attended Wave PHP, and specifically thank Matt there for his sponsorship of Wave PHP. Even though he wasn't able to attend himself, he did offer up his ticket to a local San Diego developer to attend Wave PHP. So I do appreciate that. I hope. Did everybody have a good time in San Diego? Any draw? I didn't get the chance to talk to any of you guys before you left. So, J-Mac, did you enjoy your time in San Diego?
Oh, yeah, it was good. My brother actually lives out there, so I brought my youngest brother, and we brothered it up. We broed it up.
And he actually lived not that far from where we were holding the conference, right?
Oh, yeah, he was just like right across the bay. So I guess we were Mission Beach, and he's like Pacific Beach, which is basically right across the bay. So
cool, excellent. Joe, you enjoyed yourself in San Diego, I hope.
Oh yeah, it was really nice. The wife was with me. We made a pretty long trip out of it. We were in Portland before San Diego, so instead of flying from Memphis to Portland and then back to Memphis and then back to San Diego, we just stayed in Portland with some friends and hung out for a few extra days, and then flew down to San Diego. And San Diego was fantastic.
Thanks. Sean, did you like your visit to San Diego? You're muted, Sean.
Sorry, am I here now?
Yeah.
All right, we'll just edit that out at post-show notes. What I did say is I didn't enjoy myself, but I'm just trying to get a rise out of you. But no, actually, since I've been back, I've been telling so many people, the people at our local Vancouver meetup how awesome it was, how I want to go back next year, eating lunch on the beach, all those awesome things, and especially having the venue at the hotel. Like that all the past conferences I've been into, and it's not that I'm lazy, but you have to get up early, walk to the conference, and hope that you don't miss your Uber or you don't miss the first talks, all that stuff. It was nice to just wake up and be like, oh, all right, I got 2 minutes to get upstairs. Better get that elevator. But like I said, been telling the people, the local PHP meetup working group here and at work. I think it was pretty awesome. I'm really choked in Matt over there for not showing up. I don't care that he sponsored it with those dumbass lanyards or whatever. The fact that he didn't even show up, I'm choked. I'm very insulted.
And I should point out, I do appreciate Matt for sponsoring the lanyards, but Joe, who represents OSMI, also was a huge sponsor for us as well. So thanks for that, Joe.
Yeah, I don't mind being the sponsor who shows up to the conference.
I have said it repeatedly that I am a silent partner.
Which it's always been really weird as a podcaster. You're that silent podcaster. Doesn't really work that well, Matt.
That's why I'm here for the video.
Okay,
see,
so
Matt, hang on. I see Matt went and got his hair done. Nice.
I actually had to get it out of my eyes.
He's all dolled up, isn't he? Yeah. So I think the last time we had a show was a little bit before LaraCon in New York in 2017. Is that correct? Or did we have shows after that? I don't
feel
remember.
like we had to have done one after that. I got on with you and TJ one time. I felt like it was. I don't know. I mean, you might be right. It might have been like a year ago now. Time flies. I don't know anything anymore. I'm gonna go back.
Actually, I have it right here. It looks like it was November 30th, 2017. So, yeah, about a year ago. Right? Where are we at now? October. We're in October. So a little less than a year ago. So we're good. We're good. We had some time.
Pesky off by 1 errors, but you got it. Yeah.
I like how
so
the
what's
episode,
it even?
Wait, I like how the episode just says literally 10 months ago, and we're like, how long was it ago?
Those relative time formats. Time's hard.
Time zones suck. I'll tell you. Oh, so let's go down the line. J Mac, what have you been up to? I know you've been speaking at conferences like a maniac. You've had some changes in your life, right?
Yeah, gosh. We'll keep it tech focused. Just the other stuff is basically a year-long home renovation project. So, which I was an active participant in because I like doing things with my hands. So that sounded weird when I said it out loud. Sorry about that.
Yeah, keep it PG. Come on.
You get the idea. But anyways, I like woodworking and so forth. But anyways, now that we moved in, I guess right before Wave PHP, but like you said, I think my goal was to speak at 5 conferences this year. I've spoken at 12. So that's been nuts.
I was gonna say get on my level, but you just did. So congratulations.
Yeah, I think. Well, to be fair, I think PHP World with you here in a month is number 12. There's been one every month, and there was two in April.
Well done.
So, but anyways, so I'm getting back into. I think the big announcement for me that's more related to Laravel and just development is with that kind of finishing of the house and some of these other things, I made the choice to go full-time. So I'm full-time working on my own projects now. There's a little bit of freelance work in there, but it's not like a day job that I've had before. So the day job is gone. I am the day job now. So yeah, so that's been exciting. So I've really been trying to crank out some stuff on Shift. I've been finishing up the last little add-ons for base code. I'm thinking about recording some more videos for getting Git and kind of breathing some fresh air back into that. But mostly just kicking out some Shift features. I've had tons of ideas that I've wanted to do on that, and so I'm glad to see some of those get out now.
Awesome. Yeah, that getting Git talk that you gave at Wave PHP got a lot of great feedback. I heard a lot of people talking about that. Great talk.
Yeah, I saw one joined in. I think a lot of people really liked that one. So I do like giving that one. It's just gets really tough at like at a PHP specific conference because I just don't think too many talks outside of PHP are like considered. And Git's just one of these things that like we all kind of underestimate. Like even though we use it every day, it doesn't get a lot of like our attention. So I'm sure when when conference organizers such as self-review these things, like it just doesn't appear like a top choice, even though I do think it's good talk, and so does the audience. So
I'm curious from somebody who's moving from doing contract work to basically full-time on a product. I mean, obviously you have Shift, which is well-known, fantastic product. I've used it several times. Matter of fact, I'll probably be queuing up another Shift here in a week or two. But is Shift going to be like, are you looking to continue to expand on Shift and like that being your main source of income, or are you looking to create more products kind of in the same area?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And just for those that might not be familiar, Shift's automated service for upgrading your Laravel projects. So between each of the versions that come out, you can queue up a Shift, you get a PR, and gives you all the updates and comments on things that maybe it couldn't do. But yeah, I guess one of my second passions is investing. And so one of the big things in investing is diversification. You don't want to be like all in tech, for example, because if you were all in tech, you would have had a better time probably burning your money over the last week. So point being, same with projects, to answer your question, is I like to diversify. So even though Shift is definitely the breadwinner, and I do want to give it a majority of maybe my focus, I don't want it to be the sole focus, because it's one of those things that Laravel's probably not going anywhere anytime soon, but maybe it has a shelf life. Taylor's even alluding to wanting to retire, or maybe someone else in the community builds something similar, or maybe just Taylor makes these updates continually super, super, super simple, where it's almost just like maybe there's a version soon that is just Composer update. Maybe there's no changes for that particular version, so there's a gap in money coming in potentially. So for those reasons, I don't like to spend all of my time on Shift. So it's probably like a 2-to-1 ratio now. So like right now it's 50%, but in a few weeks, I probably won't spend any time on it, and I'll work on other projects.
Cool. That's okay, guys. I'll just do a whole interview show if everybody's okay with that.
It's just you and me talking, man. It's you and me talking.
Yeah. Well,
no one else is here.
J-Mac and I, we got this. Let's pull Joe into this. Joe, you are a conference maniac. Like every conference I see, every PHP conference at least, I don't follow other conferences. There's always a photo of you, like you're a Sasquatch in the background or something. You're always at a PHP conference.
Yeah, that's the writer I have in conference. When I submit my CFPs, I send my writer along, and I require specific booze for my talks, and I require
Sasquatch in the background. What's going on?
Oh man,
what?
You're about to be murdered.
I'm just kidding.
that was the wife. Yeah. Probably just wandering around. Yeah, no. So the Sasquatch thing is definitely a writer. I have to appear in so many conference photos. Actually, this year, it was kind of a weird year for me, because I ended up running OSME kind of inadvertently, and I was kind of looking around at OSME's bank account after a very successful fundraiser last year, and it's like, well, I should probably spend some of this money. And we spent about $35,000 on conference sponsorships this year as OSME, the nonprofit. And that allowed me to go to a lot more conferences than I had planned on going, either to rep OSME or to speak or do both. So yeah, like J-Mac was saying, World's going to be our 12th event. I think it's going to be my 12th as well. If Cake Fest hadn't fallen through and had to cancel, it would be my 13th. That was the one that got away. So yeah, I've been very busy this year talking about PHP best practices and Laravel, as well as mental health.
Wait, did Cake die?
Cake did not die. They ran into issues where they couldn't put on the type of conference they've done in the past, so they didn't want to just do it part way, so they just canceled it. So they've already scheduled next year's in Japan.
Oh wow! Cake was actually, just as an aside, Cake was like the first PHP framework that I adopted. Like before that, I was one of those silly devs who wrote like custom frameworks.
Me too.
But Cake was like Cake was kind of the first one, and I did go to a few Cake Fests. They were pretty good. It was a long time ago. They've probably gotten better, so I don't want to say they suck or anything.
That was also my first talk was doing a blog with Cake in 15 minutes. That was my big talk, and everybody was always so wowed by that. Building a blog in 15 minutes with Cake PHP, and I'm like, oh yeah, those are the days. I remember that. That was fun.
Yeah. Cake and Cake DC, the organization behind the framework and that does all the consulting and everything. They're huge supporters of OSMI. So we were going to be.
Let's talk a little bit about OSMI. I mean, J-Mac did his pitch. Yeah, let's talk about OSMI. I'm sure everybody knows. I feel like everybody should know what it is, but then you never know. So go ahead.
Yeah, so OSMI, it's either OSMI or it's OSME or it's some version of that. It stands for Open Sourcing Mental Illness. It's a 501c3 nonprofit in the United States. We're based out of Indiana. We're a distributed volunteer team. Nobody gets paid to work on OSME. We're all volunteers. I'm one of the board members. I got involved in 2016 when I helped Ed Finkler make it legitimate by starting a nonprofit and going and getting all of the nonprofit paperwork sorted out with the government and all that fun stuff. And we led a very successful fundraising campaign in 2017 where we raised about $50,000. That money has rolled us into deep this year. We're still sitting up very well despite spending a lot of money sending people to conferences. So the nonprofit itself, the goal is to reduce the stigma about mental health in tech, specifically the tech industry. And when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, any of those kinds of things. And the fact that so many people in the tech industry are suffering from these illnesses and have either no idea or they don't know who to talk to. So the OSME mission is to kind of reduce the stigma by having open and honest conversations, as well as going out and doing outreach, like going to conferences, sponsoring conferences, and talking to people about the importance of mental health care. Making sure that your health care from your employer covers mental health, or if it doesn't, how to get mental health help, where to find some resources. The organization built 3 handbooks around the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA law here in the US. So we have a handbook for you as an employee, one for your boss, and we have one that's just a general handbook for how to promote a positive mental health culture in your workplace. We've partnered with organizations and companies throughout the years to kind of help them raise internal awareness. This year, a big win for us was we partnered with Docker and got to send them a speaker that spoke in front of the entire company during one of their all hands meetings about mental health and burnout and talking about stress and, how to avoid burnout and that sort of thing. And the ultimate irony of all of this is I have just about burned myself out running OSME as this past year in conferences. So I took this month off with no travel whatsoever. It's been the first month since last, I believe, a year ago, September was the last time I was at home for a full calendar month. So it's been a crazy ride. I'm looking forward to not doing it all next year myself. We've built a very awesome set of speakers that can go out and do the same style talks or even better talks than what I've been doing this past year. So my plan for 2019 is we're going to do a big fundraiser in the spring to raise some more money. We're going to sponsor a lot more events as long as we have got the money. We have a lot of events lined up that we're planning on sponsoring again, as well as sending speakers to. And our big event every year is always PHP World. PHP World has a big place in my heart because it was the PHP World 2015 was the first year, and that was the first national conference that I ever spoke at. So World has a big part of my heart, and OSME's always had really great reception, really great traction and feedback there. We were able to be a big sponsor for PHP World this year. We're going to have some pretty awesome swag to give away at the conference. So if you're going to the conference, we have OSME branded pins and little steno notebooks to give away. And we also have another piece of swag that I can't talk about because we're not announcing it before the event. I think there's 4 people that know what this swag is, and I'm just going to say it's very on brand for OSMI.
Cool. Well, now I'm really looking forward to going to PHP World. So.
Surprise swag! It's one of those things to get you into PHP World.
Yeah.
Are you going there,
Matt?
to World?
I am going to World. Yeah, we just decided. It's funny because we had so much going on. We have, we're just coming off Wave. We're actually building new offices for our company, Diego Dev. So we have some offices going in pretty close to where I live, and there was just so much going on. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to go to any conference this year. I ended up going to LaraCon because of Sean and Matt actually called me like the day before LaraCon and said, "Hey, we got a ticket. You got to get your ass out to Chicago." But I really didn't plan on going to any conferences this year, and but everything went so well with Wave PHP. Everything's going so well with our office build that my partner John and I were just like, yeah, let's head out to Virginia and hang out with PHP World since we didn't go to any other conferences. So yeah, I will be there. That's my long way of saying yes, JMac, I'll be there.
I missed LaraCon and I hated it. I was booked to go to LaraCon, and then Detroit PHP came up, They made an amazing offer to Osme for sponsorship. They had me come and speak and do some things, and it was just too good to pass up. And it meant I had to miss LaraCon, but I sure hated I missed it. I haven't been to LaraCon since the last year. I think it was 2016 in Louisville. The last year it was in Louisville was the first and only time I've been able to make it to LaraCon.
My town, yeah.
I gotta be honest, man. I still miss Louisville. This year in Chicago was pretty nice. That whole museum experience was pretty on point. But I still liked Louisville. That was because I don't know. I just liked Louisville. There was so much. It felt like there was just so much to do. Which is stupid because Chicago was pretty nice, but I still miss Louisville.
Yeah, I agree. I wish it would go back to Louisville because Louisville is just at the outer edge of my comfort to drive to a conference. So I love being able to drive to conferences because that means I get to bring Memphis beer to share with people. And there are a lot of beer snobs in the PHP community, and they're fantastic.
Was the Wi-Fi good there?
Where in Louisville?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was Wi-Fi, so it was 10 times better than Chicago.
Okay, so as long as there was, because I loved Chicago. I loved the city and just being able to go exploring and biking around and stuff. And the team I was there with, we actually a few of us went out biking each morning to go down from the hotel right along the waterfront to the actual museum, and it was just a beautiful, relaxing little morning, exercise and stuff. But the Wi-Fi thing was a bit of a what?
So the museum didn't have Wi-Fi? That's odd and unfortunate for a conference.
It was
different.
They had Wi-Fi except in the auditorium where the conference was. Like if you went outside the auditorium to like the general seating area, you had Wi-Fi. But the moment you walk through those doors, not only was Wi-Fi gone, but for me, cellular service was gone as well. Like I almost felt like it was by design. Like they had something in there disrupting it because I've never been in a spot where I didn't have cellular service, but I didn't have cellular service, Wi-Fi, or anything.
They take not interrupting speakers really seriously at that venue.
No kidding.
One of the things, the complaint I had, and I know Taylor was trying to address it, was the sound quality. At one point, it was too loud, which was perfect for me, but it was too loud for everybody else. And then other times, it was just loud enough if you were sitting up front, but if you were more in the back, you didn't get as good of you just couldn't really hear the people. I don't know if you guys had that same problem.
They were talking to at one point. I know they were having challenges with the AC running in the upper floor portion because nobody could hear anything over top of the AC. But then when you shut down the AC, the whole space would just overheat like crazy. So I think it was a challenge. I think it was a challenge, but the city was beautiful. I mean, above all things, the city was just amazing. Even just be able to explore it a bit and stuff like that.
Hey, with no San Diego, though. Just saying.
I don't know. The pizza in Chicago is a lot better than the pizza in San Diego.
Oh, you didn't go to the right place. You should have told me you wanted pizza. I would have gone to the right place. But as somebody who now has put on a conference, I can appreciate, like, when we got down to actually having to do the conference, like we got down to day 0, basically, you realized how much, as an organizer, how much was out of your control. Like, you really hope the place that you'd partnered with knows what they're doing, because there's so much that you can't control at that final hour. And I was fortunate in the fact that the place we had hosted, it went off pretty well. But yeah, I can appreciate Taylor's position. It's like, what do you do, right? I mean, it's not like it was a cheap establishment. It's like not like he went to some budget place to throw a conference. This was a beautiful museum, beautiful facility. It definitely had the auditorium built for this size of a crowd. So you think they would have figured out all these little quirks and worked through them. So yeah, that was a little unfortunate. Like I said, I hadn't planned on being there, so I was really pretty dependent on being able to do some work while I was in the conference, and it was just like sitting in there watching talks. I'd come out and like so much stuff would just be piled up waiting for me. Like I would hit Wi-Fi and all of a sudden my phone would just start dinging, ding 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 ding, ding. Sound like a slot machine. All right, Matt, what have you been up to? We've been kind of going through the line. You're up next. What have you been doing for like the last year?
The last year. Oh boy. So I decided to start my own little thing, which really is more of a shell company than anything else to handle my billing system and stuff like that through my main contract work. But I also decided to finally make a little SaaS app for fun. So far for fun, because it hasn't made any money. But that's part of the learning process. Yeah, I made a like an uptime tool that also does error tracking and stuff like that. So it's called Mission Control, and it's at getmissioncontrol.io. And essentially, I wanted to hybridize a handful of things because on some of the platforms I have to work with, we have Sentry tools. We use Sentry, we use New Relic, we use a whole bundle of different things, and it always drives me nuts having to log into 6 different things in a day to figure out what went wrong at one point in time. And so I tried to build Mission Control as a tool to do it all in one go. Right? Like you wouldn't have to look at 6 different things. You could just look at this one, and you should get a good perspective on the status of your application. And it should be able to notify you too of quirks that are, that you're not thinking about. So that's been the last few months, just building that out, seeing how that goes, learning a lot about marketing, how that works, AdWords, and
did you build it with Laravel?
Laravel? Yeah, it's all Laravel, and a ton of little open source packages, and then a lot of my open source packages have gotten the cross benefit because it's like, oh hey, I added this in here, let's go put that back in the open source stuff and everything else. I've always been a big fan of trying to build out open source stuff, so I've been maintaining a handful of packages for a while. One of the other guys took over the updating of like the Laravel collective packages for a while, and then I suddenly jumped on again with 5.7. That's been interesting, though I haven't looked at any of the PRs or comments and stuff or issues lately, but sometimes that gets some love. We'll see. It all depends on how much time there is in a week. Like, open source gets a lot of my spare time, but it can only get so much.
I've definitely enjoyed your tweets as you learn marketing and as you figure out these things and fall into some of these traps. Matt, I've definitely enjoyed living vicariously through your tweets in regards to some of these hard lessons you're having to learn. I started my technical career at a marketing agency, so I have a bit of insight into some of that, and I definitely don't envy anyone who's trying to learn marketing or trying to figure out how any of this nonsense works. I gave up years ago, and I'm happy just to be somebody in the background throwing code around.
Yeah, I in general would prefer to just work on the code and have a team of marketing people that somehow didn't cost me money, but would just make it marketing. And I always love it when, and I like, it's a catch-22, but I always like it when people are like, oh yeah, I use word of mouth, and I'm like, I have tried that, and I guess I'm not a very loud speaker or something, but it's tough because it's it's interesting. There's the weirdest little quirks. Like a recent AdWords campaign I was tinkering with, I was like, oh, let's try and narrow down the countries specifically, right? And I learned that India really likes searching for what I'm offering, but all I get are impressions, and the clicks are just to look at it. And I'm like, oh, could you subscribe? That would be real swell. Or just sign up. either would be good.
Do you think it's a money thing? Is it too expensive? Conversion?
I'm going to assume, like, honestly, I've got virtually no way of knowing precisely what it is. Well, that's not true. I could set up all the actual trackings and see exactly what's going on, but there's a point at which it's like I can keep investing more and more time into figuring out why, or I can maybe retarget a different market and stuff like that and try to angle things a little differently. I literally just started taking different countries and stuff off the AdWords campaigns because I could see that all it was just be a bunch of impressions or a few visits to the homepage and then just leaving. But you can kind of tell from where they're going with like even just using Google Analytics, you can see whether or not somebody goes further than just the homepage, right? And you can see which general areas people are who are and where they're going.
So, you know, one thing I'm thinking about with that, do you do retargeting at all? I guess it might not make sense if you're seeing people just click around and do nothing, but the retargeting aspect would be interesting where they go somewhere else and then they're reminded about it over time.
That would require further reading.
Okay, all right, fine. I forgive you. One other thing I wanted to touch on, though, about the Laravel Collective. I know that in the past you've talked a bit about people making, how do you say, like rude comment because it's not updated. I feel like I want to address that a little bit. We've got.
I think that's an open source thing more than just like that's not just Laravel Collective. That's everything. Everywhere you find open source, you'll find people who are being a little disrespectful, rude. I mean, it's trolls, right? You're never going to get away from trolls, and every social group has them. Everywhere there's a collection of people, you will generally find some trolls or people acting entitled, and it's a challenge. I think it actually has a lot to do, or it's heavily related to the mental health components too, because people who are trying to be kind and offer open source code or offer their help and stuff like that, they offer it to a certain amount, and then if somebody comes to them and says, oh, I need your help, but that person's run out of time, suddenly everybody's angry at them, or a handful of people are angry at them, and it's like, whoa, they're doing their best, and let's give a little leeway here. And the last note I'll make on that is when it comes to updates, Taylor will release something and it takes other developers a few days to update a package and release it. It's not necessarily that every developer who also makes Laravel related packages doesn't have full-time day jobs and is able to suddenly drop everything and update all the open source packages so they're completely compatible with the new versions and stuff. So I find it a little. That's probably, yeah.
I'm gonna jump in and just play devil's advocate just for a minute.
Do it.
I completely agree with the open source bit, and people should realize ultimately what they're asking. Completely agree with that, because open source implying free. Not that that's always the same thing, but just for devil's advocate though, and specifically the Laravel Collective, and I'll admit I have a bit of a unique insight here because of Shift, and so Laravel Collective is a wildly popular package. It's successful and kind of tying into products too. These should be considered products in a way, okay? And so where I draw the line is that goes both ways, but specifically, again, devil's advocate, when there's a PR waiting that says, here's support for Laravel 5.7, and it works, and it's functional, and all it is like a freaking composer, version requirements change, and that sits for like a week, like give someone in the community merge request access so you can just make 1,000 developers stop yelling at you. Like I'm not saying they should be yelling at you, but again, like some of these people that have wildly popular packages that aren't on the ball, I don't have any sympathy for them. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna back off.
I think it's a completely valid point.
And that'll be the last time J Max on the show, but ladies and gentlemen.
No, I think that's a completely valid point, and it's tough because uh, Laravel Collective is a unique thing, um, the way I see it, because like to be honest, it's not mine. I mean, I have the ability to do updates and stuff like that, but it is not mine. It doesn't carry my name anywhere except on the site. I think I'm listed as like a web developer because I jumped on at one point and I was actually bugging at him to update some stuff back in like I think 5.4 days because it wasn't updated for my open source dependencies. And so I was like, can you let me do it? I'll do it. I'll do it. And then we had a phone call and he's like, yeah, you sound okay. Let's do that. And it, the challenge becomes how do you take it from being like a really popular package, but now transfer it to either the community, but then keep a quality focus on it, or alternatively, how do you say to the community, we have to deprecate this? And I think there's actually, or not deprecate, but let it go to someone else or to whomever.
Abandonment.
Yeah, abandonment.
But that's really what they call it. I mean, to be fair, like on packages, like it says this package was abandoned. Here's kind of the alternative. Definitely don't do that on release day. You're gonna get a lot of like do it now. There's your answer.
Well, I think that's the challenge, though. Is it how? I've never read anything about optimal package abandonment methodologies, and I think that's actually something I'd like to learn more from people who have had to deal with bigger ones and have had to deal with the fallout of that, or have not dealt with the fallout of that. It's just an interesting thing because, like, honestly, that package I think it's like 16. The HTML one alone is like 16,000 downloads a day, which is ridiculous. Like that's a crazy number to me.
No, it's wildly popular. I mean, even just in the analytics from that I talked about at LaraCon, like I mean, Laravel Collective HTML package was like third, and it was only behind like I don't know what, I'll have to look it up, but I mean it was behind something that was like basically core included it, like.
And I think there was like 2 or 3 collective packages on your list, JMac. If I remember correctly, there was more than HTML. I think
there was like another one towards the bottom for sure. There were a lot once you got down to about 10% of projects using it. But I mean, Laravel Collective was like a majority of projects use it. So that's the only reason I'm giving it a little flack. Plus, I get a lot of support emails of like, "Oh, my app didn't run," and I was like, "Well, what shift to?" "Oh no, Laravel Collective, it couldn't compose or update." I was like, "Not my fucking problem, bro."
All right, I'll take blame for that.
As the maintainer for Homestead, I can happily say that we've never had an instance of not being able to support a Laravel version on release day. I'm very proud of that track record. I claim all of responsibility. That is 100% my doing as an open source project maintainer. Not at all to do with having absolutely no tie into the framework whatsoever.
Joe gets it.
I do. In all the different ways. I see what you did there. I mean, as the Homestead maintainer, I don't have to deal with a lot of that kind of stuff, right? Like I was joking around, I'm really lucky in terms of Laravel could release a new thing and it doesn't affect the project at all. But I also understand where Matt's coming from, where Collective isn't his. Homestead isn't mine, but depending on the time of day and depending on when you ask me, I'll say it's mine. At this point, it's my baby. I have taken as much ownership as Taylor will let me, and I've tried to keep the principles intact as I've maintained the project, and I've tried to keep the philosophies and the principles and the original vision there, while trying to expand and make it not just a Laravel development platform, but just a PHP development platform.
Yeah, we could all stand to be a little bit more like Joe, couldn't we?
Maybe not. It depends.
Well, you have a good sense of responsibility, a good head on your shoulders. That's what I get from you.
Well, that's good to hear. I appreciate that. No,
we have some pretty heavy hitters now. When you step back and look at this, I mean, we've got the creator and maintainer of Shift, the maintainer of Homestead. and the maintainer of Laravel Collective, I'm not sure what I'm doing sitting here right now. I'm not sure what my role is here.
I'm not
just
sure what my role is. I just write a bunch of Ruby for a bunch of PHP developers. It's really weird.
So Sean, what have you been up to the last year?
Forget it. Last year for me, oh man, a whole bunch of stuff. Part of the reason for LaraChat live falling off was just being too busy with work, daily life, all those kind of things. And it's interesting, J-Mac talking about woodworking, playing with his hands kind of thing. I started getting into woodworking myself, started building up kind of a wood shop in my basement. Very, very basic one, but I've been able to build a couple things, which has actually been really fun to build things. Like that's why I love web development. It's to build things, but to build something that's not a website, something tangible, it's a real sense of satisfaction. So I'm going to keep doing that. Keep building up my workshop, get some more tools and all that kind of stuff. And then so the other thing with me is the full-time job has really taken off. I've taken up I'm now the engineering manager for the company here, and so just managing people now, more on the people management side rather than the code. So it's been an interesting shift, I guess, to step a little bit away from the code. Now, I have to admit, while I step away from the code at work, I definitely don't step away from it at home. So I take the train to and from work, so I get about an hour there to kind of just hack away on some of my own fun stuff. And then once the kids go to bed, and if the wife goes to bed early, well, I've got some free time there and hack away on my projects. Some of the projects have been stuff like our other Slack channel, the DevOps related one. We've got about 15,000, just over 15,000 members now. I just redid the front end and the website for that to include DevOps articles. You can post your events and jobs to that. I built a little bit of a kind of a bot that if people mention the bot in the Slack channel with their question, it will go onto the site. Nobody's really taken advantage of that. I probably need to do a better job of communicating and marketing it. I also started a theme marketplace that I'm hoping to launch really soon for the CSS framework called Balma that I really like, balma.io. I've been getting some themes in place, HTML, CSS, so that people can buy the theme, download it, use it on their application. And then I've been kind of playing with the idea of some kind of design as a service platform where like I have designers that work for me, and figured I could maybe do something where I open that to the Laravel community. If people need designs on a retainer basically, or like a monthly cost, they can make those requests. I'm playing with that idea. I'm not 100% sure about that. And then the other thing I've been doing is getting more involved in the startup space and the mentoring type of space. So got involved with a startup weekend where I was a mentor for getting new people who are trying to make companies, trying to get them focused and delivering what they need to be able to make a company. A lot of the time, developers will want to develop the entire application, put it out into market, and the whole saying, if you build it, they will come. That's not true at all. So I've been working with the this startup community to help mentor new developers, new people to try and do the right things, I guess. And then we also have like a blockchain component, which we do blockchain education, which we do it for companies that want to learn about blockchain. They're like accounting companies, legal firms who have been asking us questions about that. And we're trying to build up a whole platform around educating in emerging technologies. There's a lot of things on the side that are going on, and a lot of things that are going on. So been really busy. And this whole time I'm trying not to crack up because goddamn J-Mac is just like bobbing his head up and down like he's on an elevator or something. Like, come on, guy, let's be professional here.
I was wondering what was going on over there. I just wasn't going to question it.
Just having fun, man.
Yeah, I can't blame you.
Stretching my legs. Stretching my legs.
I'm proud of myself for not cracking up, though.
Design as a service. That's nuts. Who was posting something about that? Was it Jack McDade or somebody? It was maybe like a month or two ago. He was like super interested in something like that. But it was more like maybe it was Justin Justin Jackson or something, or is that the right name?
Interesting. Yeah, I must have missed
One of those guys was posting about something like, and it was just a mashup. Like they didn't have something. They were just like, this would be really cool, and they kind of put like 3 things together. Or maybe it was Ian. I don't know. Whatever. I'm gonna quit naming names. Someone on Twitter. Okay.
Right, well, if you find that, like, I've got the designer to do this. It's what I do outside of like the Laravel community. I was thinking, well, maybe this would be cool for the Laravel devs. And I was like, I don't know, but yeah. So I guess that's kind of been my year update, and I'll do Eric a favor so he doesn't have to do it himself. Eric, what the hell have you been up to?
I think I've already shared what I've been up to. I mean, we've been building Diego Dev, the company I have. We did Wave PHP this year, which took a lot of time. But yeah, I mean, that building new offices for Diego Dev and just plugging along. That's it. It's funny listening to you guys talk about how much into woodworking you're getting, because I've always been fascinated by it, and I'm not that good at it. But one of the first LaraCons I went to, I met a guy called I'm gonna butcher his name, but his name is his first name is Jesse. I know that. His last name was like Shoot or Shut or something like that. Yeah.
He was on the first LaraChat live, if not the first one, the second.
Oh, really? There you go. He's a woodworking maniac, man. I follow him on Twitter.
Built something in the woods in like Wisconsin. Like, check him out on Twitter.
With just like a pocket knife. I mean, the guy is fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
it's just
amazing. Tweezers and like floss.
Yeah.
And it looks good. It looks real good. And he's got some pictures on Twitter. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think it is like Jesse Shoot or Shuit, or might be messing up the but it's something like that.
I just had a brainstorm. Sorry to cut you off there, Eric. Next LaraCon, JMac, you and I are going to do like a hallway track where we teach people to build like birdhouses. How about that?
Yeah.
Like the little Home Depot, you'll get everybody like orange aprons.
Little aprons, like Laravel aprons. It was really funny. My dad, when I was young, I don't know why, he called me Jaybird. So, anyways, that was a young nickname before JMac.
You should have stuck with Jaybird.
It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, let's talk code. Let's talk some code for like the last 10 minutes.
Let's talk some code for sure. Yeah.
Can I start us off with something?
Please.
Oh, you were dazing at your screen. I thought you were like, we're not going to talk about code.
No, I can talk about anything.
No, I'm in Eric. No, I got something to start us off.
Oh, you go ahead.
I mean, unless somebody else does. I'm going. Anyways, so what I've been trying to do lately is like with some naming, and I think Marcel or somebody had talked about this on Twitter the other week. But I've really been trying in this new app that I'm working on. But I've really dropped suffixing things with like the class type or the object type. And Laravel's actually a little bit mixed on this, I noticed. And so like controllers, for example, when you make a controller, like there's the home controller, but it's in a controller's folder and a controller's namespace, and it's controller commands, and it extends controller, and it's like freaking controllers 75 times in the context, right? So it's one of those things where they don't do it, or they do it with controllers, but they pretty much do it with like nothing else. Like Laravel, by convention, meaning they don't really do it. So I don't know. I've just been dropping it and kind of seeing how it feels, right? So
my first question to you is: when you're working on a ton of files, you have a ton of files open in your editor. Are you looking at the tabs to figure out the names, and like you have 5 files open named home? and you're trying to figure out which one's the model, the request, the controller, what have you.
I could see that being fair. That's kind of why I wanted to discuss. I mean, I'm more of like, I just do like a file open and go straight to whatever it is. So I don't look at things by the tab name. But I could see that being a bit odd, like from a file tab perspective. But
yeah, I have a bad habit of opening a bunch of files and then just looking at the file name to swap back and forth instead of reopening the file. And that's just pure laziness, I guess, is me as a developer of just always knowing the file is already open, so I don't want to open that file dialog to go find the file when that's probably more efficient than me looking around with my mouse and trying to find the file that I'm trying to find.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand like the home controller would look a little weird if it was just called home. So like I'm not necessarily advocating this. I'm just like kind of trying it to see, and because I would prefer not to. I think left to my own devices, meaning not kind of grokking the framework, like, following its conventions, like I probably wouldn't suffix these names because I don't think there's a lot of value add. Like you're already getting that information from the context namespace folder, 17 other places, so there's no reason to put it in the name. But anyways.
Have you found it all in the process when you're actually reading your code or handling injections and stuff? Is it a little different then because you're looking at it from like a top-down view? And I'm just trying to think in terms of, because I've tinkered with this before, or at least I've been told to do it before, and then I've rejected this. But but then I've also accepted it, but then rejected it, and there's never been a consistency on it, right?
I completely agree, and like I said, even Laravel by default goes back and forth. But just what I do find though is that when there's plenty of places where it's awkward, and I'm not saying this works all the time, but a perfect example are form request objects, and as we know, I kind of advocate those more than most. But when you have a form request object and it's type hinted in the method signature, and you have request on the class name, you have something like create user request $request. So it's like create user request. So like obviously it reads better to just say create user request. So there's better pairing and context. And again, that doesn't scale, but I just read as a human, read it, and I'm all about readability. So like as a human reading that, that's the point where I don't need the extra context. It sounds like a double negative at would if we were speaking English, So like that double request sounds weird. I'm not saying it works everywhere, but it does lead you, in my opinion, maybe down a road of having richer names of like your application type variables or methods. So you propagate that reading, because a lot of the times we are technical, so we just stay technical and we just like throw a bunch of freaking type names and object types and things that don't really explain what the domain or the human or the business would say. Anyway.
Yeah, no, two things about that. Like when I use the invocable, the invoke method on a controller, and in the Laravel examples, it's like show home, and I'm like, I was using it the other day, and I forget what the class was, but we'll stick with show home. So I put show home PHP artisan show home controller -- invoke, and I was looking at it. It's like it fits within the folder structure of my other controller, but it doesn't feel right. So then I tried it and took it away. And again, I'm looking at it like, why is show home in this control list of controllers? It got too confusing. Like I can't find that consistency that I like. And I have like that OCD like feeling of which one is the right one? Which one works? Which one's readable? Which one makes sense? And I haven't found that balance myself. But one of the things I am against is if you have a company or a product. Let's use Shift, for example. You don't have Shift in your form request, like Shift create whatever, like you're not prefixing the company name into it, or you're creating a service class and calling it company name create blog post service, something like that.
Yeah, like vanity namespaces. I talk about that, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I don't do anything that's vain, what I would call vain. Like I don't put Shift in like all of the object names like everywhere, and change the app namespace to Shift is awesome.
I think you're missing out. That's pure marketing you're missing out on, man.
Who? I'm marketing myself as a developer.
I'm also looking forward to I'm really looking forward to the feedback on the pull request where you drop a lot of these naming conventions. That would be pretty amusing. On the other hand of that, speaking from not working in a Laravel code base, the day job I work on a CRM product that's a SaaS, and it's an old Kohana framework application, and it's really nice as I'm introducing these paradigms of proper object-oriented and proper namespacing and separation of classes. It's been really helpful to see my developers and my team figure out that, oh, this thing controller and this thing request, that actually makes a lot of sense, or this thing collection or a thing repository. So coming at it from a different angle where you're not in Laravel directly, it's been really helpful to convey intent and to convey a pattern with developers who may not be super familiar with some of those concepts. So in that regard, it's been super helpful, but I definitely can understand working in Laravel in and out every day, and you're just really tired of seeing controller, or what have you.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. The learning in the beginning. I mean, we're all at different levels, so I mean, this may not apply, and I fully admit I contradict myself. It's just I will, like, generally speaking, if I see something on Twitter or if I read a blog post or whatever, or sometimes just on purpose, I'll kind of do something a certain way and try it for like 3 or 4 days and kind of see how it applies. And I think some devs are kind of scared to do, not scared, but like our brains aren't programmed to do that. Everything's black and white, like everything's binary. You either always name things this way or you always don't. And I think as you get more relaxed with your programming abilities, like you see that there's plenty of areas of gray in between where maybe it can be, this middle ground thing. It doesn't have to be 0 or 1. It doesn't have to be suffix or no suffix. But I mean, I see both sides.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that whenever you learn something like that, you typically learn it from somebody who's like fanatical about it, and it's hard to as you're learning it understand, like you said, where that gray area is. It's like, okay, when should I really be using this? Because you may be learning from somebody who's like, oh no, you always use this, you always do it this way, no exceptions.
Yeah, to be able to live with the gray. I think learning where the gray is a lifelong thing, but being able to live with gray is something that I think devs have a hard time with. We're always searching for that absolute, it's getting a little philosophical, but I try not to be someone who's like, you must always do it. Like if I'm saying you must do something some way, it's like tried and true, like 20 years of experience. Like I've like hated myself for doing it the other way. So I'm trying to save you time. But most of the time, as you see, I mean, I'll even contradict myself, and I'm okay with that.
Always be willing to learn and challenge those steadfast held opinions. One of the things, also on my day job, we're recruiting, and one of the things that I love to ask potential developers is, tell me one of your strongest held developer opinions. And a lot of people will right off the bat come out with tabs or spaces or whatever, right? And it's like, okay, now tell me one of those really, really strongly held opinions that you've changed your mind on, and tell me about a time where you learned something and it changed one of those strongly held opinions. And that, I mean, it's not intended to be one of those trip up interview questions. It's just, I want to see if a candidate has actually been able to change their a really strongly held opinion, because I love a developer who has strong opinions that are loosely held. And that's really important quality for me, is I want to be able to teach somebody a better way, even if they've done it the same way 20 years, because that's how they learn. I want them to be able to be flexible enough to learn and to adapt. And it's been very telling in a lot of interviews where people were like, oh, I've never changed my opinion. It's like, oh, okay. So either you're not learning or you're too hard-headed to ever even entertain the idea that something you may be doing may be wrong.
I am totally stealing that.
I like that. I like strong opinions that are loosely held. That's cool. It's kind of like PHP. It's like strong typing in a loosely typed language.
Exactly.
Again, I'll just leave that over there.
Dropping knowledge bombs and just letting them linger.
I got one question. This is one thing that it kind of carries this conversation. Like when I started with Laravel, I was learning about it, and the person that was kind of like, I don't know, a mentor or supporter to help me understand how the framework works, they were really strong on service repository pattern. So I said, okay, great, I'll do everything with service repository. I started doing that, and then over time, I started dropping the repository because that's what Eloquent is. What was the point of that extra abstraction layer? And then I started having everything in a service, and then it was like, why do I need everything to have a service? So then I only did services where I had extra business logic or with connecting to two different models. They're doing domain specific logic, and everything that went into that could fit into the controller in, I don't know, less than 6 to 12 lines anywhere in there. I kept it in the controller. I kept it right at the top level. So that kind of falls under what Joe said about, having strong opinions, but being able to kind of be loose about them, change your mind, and step away from that. But I'm curious about like your guys' experience over the years as a new developer for myself, and someone who worked on custom framework to different frameworks like some other ones I'm forgetting the names of, and then coming to Laravel. There was always a sense of you have to do it this way. You have to have all these extra classes, all these extra abstractions, interfaces, all these extra work. So to make a simple API endpoint, you have to create 10 to 12 classes versus Laravel. If you want to create an API endpoint at its simplest form, at its very simplest form, you can just have a closure in your route. If you want to have a controller, you just have a controller with an invoke method or an action method, whatever. But I find as I've gotten older, I tend to lean towards something that's simpler, scalable, and just gets the job done instead of having a large layer of classes around them. I'm curious about your guys.
I think I'm going to make 2 quick points. The first point is I had a solid belief that I was going to use CodeIgniter for my entire career. And I was hell bent on that for a long time. And then Laravel 4 was like, hey, and I was like, ooh, I like you. And in that same year, I had to write a package in Symfony, one in a Zend thing. And the year after that, I worked with Kohana for like a year and a half. It was just frameworks all around. But the big thing I'll say, I think this is just a general thing, and it's also a hard thing to consider sometimes, is that I find if something has been picked at the beginning of a project, it should be maintained in that manner for a fair amount of time until there's a general refactoring point. Because a big problem I see sometimes is one developer will come out with one methodology and one train of thought, and then another developer comes in and there's just a completely different way of doing things, and suddenly you get into a challenge with a team in terms of consistency across the board. So I think you should kind of follow one path within reason.
Right. And actually, Matt touched on a lot of the questions I was about to bring up with you specifically, Sean. And I think, Joe, you're kind of in a similar position. Like, where you have JMac, who's kind of master of his own domain. He kind of sets the precedence of, what patterns he's going to follow and what patterns he isn't going to follow. When you're having to set that path for a team under you, how do you make the decision on what practices and patterns you want to implement? So I know for me, and I'm kind of a stickler about it, and I recognize that in myself, is that I am a fan of the repository pattern, because it makes a lot of sense to me, even though I will admit, I have never been in a position where I've swapped out a data store backend and been able to say, oh yeah, this is going to be easy because we use the repository pattern to do it. But I do kind of preach that down the chain of developers who are working on projects for me. I'm like, hey, I'd really like to see a repository pattern here.
I get that because you're the CTO of the company, you're leading the charge. And one of the things that one of my earlier managers told me years and years ago was a story. He was a huge Star Trek fan, and he was telling this story. And I don't watch Star Trek, but they came to a fork in the road, and there's that half robot guy, Data, I think, and he analyzed the computations of 50% will die this way, 50% will die that way, whatever, right? And so the crew was like, oh my God, I don't know which way to go. So the captain just put on a brave front and said, we're going this way. You put on that confidence front, even though you're unsure or you know there's risk behind it or reasons why you shouldn't. You have to lead that company. You have to lead your crew. And if they fail, it's on you. Because if they fail, they quit or they get fired or they just don't do it. Guess who has to do the work? You. So I get that.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think though that, in terms of like team structure and stuff like that, if you push forward on one pattern, in the context of a single project, it makes a lot of sense. Now, if a junior developer proposes a different architecture structure, that's it's worth discussing, but it's also a matter of kind of just putting in perspective that it's like, okay, love it, maybe next project that's a great way to kind of go toward, and we can look at refactoring this one, but it's a challenge.
I think the hope is that a team evolves together, or at least a majority of the team evolves together, to where you can be on the same page. I mean, the teams that I've enjoyed, I mean, I'm definitely on my own now, so I agree with that. But the teams that I have worked on, that I felt like I learned a lot and we really did well, and I really kind of went home fulfilled, and I stayed at the longest, to be honest, were the teams that normally that was happening. We were kind of evolving together, and when someone would kind of like bring something up that like, hey, we should try it this way or whatever, like, there was more openness, and it wasn't just some rogue new guy coming in that was just like, all this stuff's crap and we got to rip it all out. And I agree. I don't like when people do that.
Joe, do you have a thought about this kind of, I don't know what to call it, technical growth?
I agree with what JMac said about being on teams where the best engagement I've had on teams is where we were learning and we were skilling up at the same time, and sharing in that knowledge and that growth. And currently I'm in the position where I have a team of people who are going through a similar process. And while I myself am not learning these new things, I'm the one teaching, and I'm the one paying it back to the people who taught me how to do all these things. And it's been really amazing to watch a team of developers grow. And one of the things that I really enjoy is I enjoy showing my development team something new to play with, and they go and they use it everywhere. And they very quickly find, oh, well, a trait isn't supposed to do that, or a request probably shouldn't be doing anything with the data or the model or something like that. So being able to see people be really energetic in going and playing with new things that they learn, and abusing those tools to find their limits and to find the edges of what a thing is useful for is very rewarding, in being able to watch that and see developers grow like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. JMac, you had one more thing?
Yeah, I know we're getting at time. This was just something that was kind of fresh from today that I was working on. So I went to cache my routes in production for Laravel, just, a little performance boost, whatnot, PHP artisan route cache or whatever the command is. And it basically was like, hey, can't cache your routes because you have a closure-based route. And so when I looked at the closure, it wasn't really that I was doing anything fancy. In fact, I was just returning a view, like just straight away. Like, no logic, no nothing, no calculation, just straight returning a view. So it was a pretty weak closure, to be fair, but I was a little surprised that, not surprised, but part of me thinks Laravel can handle this better or somehow. So before I like went to PR and bothered Taylor and all that stuff, and like Graham closes my stuff in 11 seconds, like I thought that maybe I'd ask or maybe poll the audience, you know, if we don't answer it right now, because I know we're at time, but is there, you know how there's like an arrow middleware or an arrow groups? I'm wondering if there is, or if not, I'm thinking about making like an arrow view. So if you really just have that use case where you just want to return a view, you could do arrow view, and so we can still get that performance caching that you would get from just a basic controller. Because really all it's doing is like array mapping and flattening that stuff. So I looked at core a little bit, like it wouldn't be hard to add, but I didn't see it.
But don't, they have that route. I would say they have that route view now.
Yeah.
That just returns
like
a view.
I said, I'm sure they do. Like, is that what I'm missing?
Yeah, 5.7 route views.
See, I knew it was in there. It must, is it in the docs?
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm an idiot. See, I'm glad I joined tonight. I learned something. I knew it was in there. I don't know why I missed that. I thought I looked at the docs. Sometimes the docs like link to like an old 5.4 and you don't realize. You're like, I wish Google, like, you know, that's no one's really fault, I guess, but there's just so many docs out there that like you won't realize you're not looking at the latest, you know, or you're looking at the latest, you need to be looking, you know, it's vice versa. It always never, whatever.
I'm surprised you couldn't do that on there though.
Yeah. And I love that route view too. I mean, it's made it so easy just to throw up a page.
Is it cacheable though? Maybe that's the missing link. Maybe I did try it, but it still wasn't cacheable.
I don't know why it wouldn't be cacheable.
Yeah,
but
I'll have to mess with it.
That's a good question. I don't know, because you can still pass variables to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it isn't cacheable, but
I'll check it out. I'll check. No. I don't think I've fully tried it, so I'll check.
You know, I gotta say, bless your heart, JMac, thinking we have an audience. Bless your heart for that.
Someone's gonna watch it. Someone will watch. I guarantee you, we're developers. Someone's gonna watch this and tweet me, be like, "Hey, JMac, you're not the master. You don't even read the freaking docs." Because they will.
Yeah. And we have about 400 views, or we had about 400 views.
And by the way, whoever that is, I love you. I'm just kidding. I love you so much. Very, very, very much.
That got a little intense. That escalated. Okay. I think that's pretty good for our return visit to LaraChat.
Come back.
Are we making this a regular thing, guys? Yeah. Joe?
Yes.
J-Man, can we get a commitment from you guys?
Probably every now and then regularly.
I'm up for whatever. I'm planning on not traveling a lot, so I should be home to do all the things that I've missed doing this year.
Fantastic. All right, cool. All right, well, cool. I think that's it. That'll be it for episode 36 of LaraChat. First LaraChat in 2018. So thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate it.
See ya.